What's up, everybody? It's McCollum Productions coming to you with another video. Today we'll be talking about Emmett Till. Emmett Till was the son of Mammy and Louis Till of Chicago, Illinois. Mammy was originally from a small town in Tallahatchie County, Mississippi called Webb, and she moved to Chicago as a kid. She became one of the very first black city workers for the city of Chicago. Louis was in the United States military and was killed in Europe in World War II. After doing some further research after finishing this video, I learned that Emmett Till's father was hung in Italy in 1945 by the U.S. Army after being found guilty of the rape of 2 Italian women in a raid and then the murder of one. When he was killed, he had left Mammy a ring before his deployment with his initials on LT, and that was one of the only keepsakes she had from her husband. Well, she ended up passing that down to her son Emmet, her only child. Emmet grew up in Chicago. He went to middle school up into the 7th grade. In the year 1955, his uncle came to visit him and his mother in Chicago from Mississippi. His uncle invited him and his 16-year-old cousin down to come visit the family back in Money, Mississippi. Emmet and his cousin ended up wanting to go, but his mom tried to talk him out of it. Mammy told him that he could get killed down there, that if he was walking down the sidewalk and a white woman walked past him, that he better look down at the sidewalk and get off, or walk the opposite direction, not even to look at her, because she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. She knew how the racial politics was in Alabama, Mississippi, and the South. So she didn't want her son to go. She warned against it. But Emmet was set. He wanted to go for sure. He wanted to go down there and see his family and see a place that he really didn't get to see a whole lot. So him and his cousin left in August to go down there to see their family. They worked as sharecroppers, so Emmet and his cousin worked during the day. They picked some cotton while they was down there, and after the sun came all the way out around noon, and it was the peak heat of the day, the kids, they'd all take a break. They'd go down the street to the store in Money, and the store was called Bryant's Grocery. So they would go to this Bryant's grocery store, and the kids would go buy drinks and candy and stuff like that. All the kids were taking turns. They was going in one person, 2 people at a time, things like that. Emmet had went in, and he was in there for only about 1 minute, but his cousin stated as he left that he had whistled at the white woman working behind the counter, the owner's wife, Carolyn Bryant. So after that happened, Carolyn Bryant actually went out to her car and got a pistol. The boys saw it, and they left. His cousin later said in an interview that they didn't really think anything about it after a few days, but for the first 2 days they was worried about it. This happened on a Wednesday, so Wednesday they was worried about it. Thursday they was worried about it. By Friday they wasn't thinking too much about it. Well, anyway, they left, and Carolyn Bryant told her husband about the situation. I don't know exactly what she told her husband in the original statement to him, but whatever she said that angered him and his brother, J.W. McCollum, actually rode around looking, trying to find whoever this black kid was. They pulled up, and they actually picked a black kid up walking down the side of the road, brought it back to Carolyn, and she said, no, that's not the right one. So a few days later, they was looking around, and they found out from asking around that it was a kid who came from Chicago. It was an out-of-town kid named Emmett Till, and he was staying with Mose Wright, his uncle. So they went to his house, and when they went in, they was looking around trying to find which one was him. They had a flashlight and a gun. They found Emmett Till, and they got him out of bed, and Mose Wright went to stop them, and they said, how old are you? And he said 64. And J.W. McCollum told him that if he told anybody, he wouldn't see 65. So actually, Mose Wright let these guys come into his house and get his nephew, and they left with him. So he went out on the porch, and he waited for about 20 minutes, seeing if they was going to bring him back, if they was going to beat him, or what they was going to do. So after 20 minutes, he knew it was probably something serious. So he got in the car and he left, and him and one of his friends went riding around the town of Money looking for these guys and trying to see if they could find Emmett Till's body. Well, anyway, Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam took Emmett Till to a barn, and one of the witnesses later stated that he could hear the beating and hear the screaming and the crying of whoever they was beating in the barn. He was down the hill from the barn, and his name was Willie Reed. Willie Reed also later testified that he saw the two white men, J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant, in the front seat and two black men in the back seat. And they suspected that it was two black men who worked for J.W. Milam, but when they were questioned, they never were indicted for the crime. A few days later, J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant were arrested by LaFleur County Sheriff's Department. And the reason why they was arrested was for kidnapping. Emmett Till's body was still missing, but they had admitted that they had went and picked him up from Mose Wright's house, but they denied that they had killed him. Later, a body was found in the Tallahatchie River in LaFleur County, and they pulled it out, and they asked Mose Wright to come identify it. He said that was Emmett Till, and it actually had the LT ring, the Louis Till ring, that he had got from his father before. When they found Till's body, his face was destroyed completely. His head was completely crushed. His eyeball was hanging out of his eye socket. He had been shot through right above his ear, and he had been tied to a fan with barbed wire around his neck to weigh him down in the river. Later on, someone came forward and stated that someone named Too Tight Leroy Collins, a black man from the area, was washing out the truck, and a guy came up and asked him what he was washing off the truck because it was a lot of blood, and he said they beat him to death and just laughed. After that, Leroy Too Tight Collins went missing, and he was never heard from again. When it was time for Emmett Till's funeral in Chicago, his mother, Mammy Till, ordered that she wanted it to be an open casket funeral. She said that it felt like the entire city of Chicago came. There's famous pictures known all across the world of Emmett Till's dead body beaten and battered laying in his casket in Chicago. A trial of Emmett Till's murder later started in LaFleur County, Mississippi, and Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam's number one defense was that they could not prove that that was the body of Emmett Till. An all-white male jury, every single one of them being from LaFleur County, where Bryant and Milam were from, after only 60 minutes, found Bryant and Milam innocent. They said that it would have took half as long, but they stopped and got a Coke on the way there. And you could hear the jurors laughing down the hallway. The white people of the town, they were very angry with all this attention coming in, and they were all behind J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant for the most part. During the trial, Mose Wright stood up and was asked if he could identify the killers of Emmett Till, the ones who came in his house and took Emmett. And he stood up and he said that he had been silent for too long, and he pointed out J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant. Also, Willie Reed testified about what he had saw and what he had heard up at that barn. Willie Reed said this in barely over a whisper. He was scared for his life. Immediately following that, he was actually snuck out of the state of Mississippi the day of the trial and taken to Chicago for his safety. During the trial, Carolyn Bryant stated that Emmett grabbed her hand and said, "How about a date, baby?" Then he followed her around the store and grabbed her by the waist and said that he had been with white women before. Later on in an interview in 2008, Carolyn Bryant admitted that everything was fabricated and that all accusations were false. Emmett Till's murder was the graphic, shocking, gory scene that people saw that really caused a lot of white people and black people in the North as well to get behind the civil rights movement and to support their brothers in the South, the black community. Emmett Till and his open casket funeral that Mammy pushed for, people saw this all over the world, people in Europe, people in Asia. His pictures made it to newspapers and TV channels all across the world, and that put a lot of pressure on the South and the state of Mississippi, and it also caused a lot of attention from other civil rights leaders to come to the Delta area. Mammy Till, in one of her worst times, stepped forward and was able to move the whole black community of the South forward with her bravery and with her strength that she wanted. She had already suffered through this. She wanted to help other people see what was going on so it wouldn't happen again. Without her, the civil rights process might have been greatly slowed down. So, this is McCollum Productions with another video. Like, comment, subscribe.